Being a Kobalts fan hasn't exactly been easy. It's been one of the tougher things when it comes to the Marble League. Let's see how they've done in their 10 years as a franchise. Starting out in 2016, the Kobalts would be one of the original 16 teams, with their roster consisting of Azure, Cerulean, Royal, and Dodger. That year wasn't anything too special as they finished in 9th, but they did show some signs of light with 2 silver medals, one being at Water Race courtesy of Azure, and the other being at Precision Slalom. As they're heading into 2017, the Kobalts decided that they needed to make a roster change, replacing Royal and Dodger with Gnome and Meepo. Although the first 2 events of the 2017 qualifiers were rather rough, a strong showing in block pushing gave them a decent chance at qualifying for 2017. But unfortunately for them, Cerulean would not do enough in funnels, and the Kobalts would end up missing out on 2017. On the bright side, the Kobalts at least got to watch the league from the stands. In 2018, the Kobalts would decide to bring back Royal onto their team as a reserve as they prepare for the Winter Marble League, hosted by the Snowballs. And much like 2017, the Kobalts were not off to a good start in the first half of qualifiers. And although they would do pretty good in both Ice Dash and Halfpipe, unfortunately, it would still not be enough for the Kobalts as they would miss out on the 2018 Marble League by 1 point to the Midnight Wisp, who would eventually win the league. What could have been Kobalts, what could have been. The Kobalts would then test their luck in the 2019 Marble League qualifiers, into which they did pretty abysmal, with their only top half finish coming in block pushing, into which they finished 9th. The other 3 events, however, were a mess, which included an 18th place in funnels by Meepo, and below average finishes in both the relay race and the underwater race. The Kobalts would get another opportunity to be seen as they partake in the 2019 Showdown, into which they started off decent with a 5th place in Sand Rally by Azure. But due to the team faltering and collision and Meepo doing bad in funnels, the Kobalts would be sitting in danger of relegation. The team would need to have an all-time performance at balancing if they want to avoid getting relegated for 2020. Sadly for them, they could only finish 5th in balancing as they would join the Turtle Sliders, Shiny Swarm, and Limers into relegation for 2020. After the 2019 Showdown, it was reported that the Kobalts would declare for bankruptcy. Fortunately for them, a former athlete of theirs, being Dodger, would step in and save the team from bankruptcy by purchasing the team. Coming off of a performance like that, the Kobalts would prepare for the 2020 Showdown, which would get off to a rather comical start with Cerulean just chilling at the starting gate. They would still finish top half and would do rather middle of the pack-ish in Halfpipe. The team would turn things around in the second half of the Showdown with back-to-back golds in Black Hole Funnels set by Royal and Cerulean and Sand Moguls set by Azure. This would be good enough for the Kobalts to win the Showdown. And since they won the Showdown, they would get their chance to shine in Marbula One Season 2, where they would send out their captain Azure and Cerulean. Cerulean did pretty good, placing 6 out of the 40 individual racers, scoring 66 points, which included a bronze at Aquamarine and a silver at Midnight Bay. They could have potentially had a 3rd medal at Misty Mountain, but thanks to Bumble and Clutter, that did not happen. They would instead finish in 5th. Azure, on the other hand, would have a pretty rough time, DNQing in 4 of their 6 races. And for the 2 races they actually qualified for, Azure did pretty decent in both of them, finishing 7th at Race Forest and 6th at Pellet Park. They would finish in 35th in terms of individual standings, but the Kobalts as a team would finish in 8th out of the 20 teams. After their performances in the 2020 Showdown and Season 2 of Marbula One, the Kobalts would then head into the qualifiers for 2021. The first event went decent for them, placing 4th in Swing Wave, but because of an 11th place finish by Royal and the team taking 10th in Relay, the Kobalts would be in danger of not qualifying once again. They would have to hope for Azure to do really good in Sand Rally if they want to make it.
Let's watch here. Pinkies. Contact across the line, and then it's a photo finish for 2nd place. So Pinkies won the event, and it is officially by 1/100th of a second. Bon Bon from the Chocolatiers.
1/100th of a second. If that does not define heartbreak for this team, I don't know what does. Azure did pretty good, but unfortunately, Bon Bon just had their number. And the Kobalts would miss out on the league by the slimmest of margins once again. The team in Brilliant Blue would have to roll their way into another Showdown, into which they had a pretty good start with a silver in 5-meter sprint and Gnome taking gold in funnels. They will also come away with another silver in block pushing, leaving them to be in first after the first half of the Showdown events. The second half of the showdown wasn't anything too spectacular, with the exception of Azure taking bronze in Sand Moguls. Cerulean will also take 5th in Marbula Cross, which would be enough for the Kobalts to repeat as Showdown champions over the Pinkies. Marbula One Season 3 would come up, and the Kobalts would sub out Azure and bring in Royal. As for how the season went for the team, they had a pretty good showing. Despite kicking the season off with a 20th place finish at Two-More Turnpike, Cerulean would turn things around for the season as they had 4 top half finishes, 3 of those being in the top 5. They would have a decent season and would place 14th out of the 40 racers. And as for Royal, they had a rather strong season, placing top 6 in all but one race, and they would manage to pick up 2 race wins, the first one being at Honeycomb over 6 seconds. And for the second one, they would be in a tight battle with defending champion Red Eye.
They would be tied, and the tiebreak, I believe, would go to the Crazy Cat's Eyes, but Red Eye loses. They won. Oh my goodness, Royal, to begin the final lap, has stolen the lead away. Clementon holds 3rd spot. That is enough for the championship if it holds. Here comes Red Eye. 1 sector to go. The crowd willing them on. Through the banking comes Royal, Red Eye in 2nd, and that is how they will finish.
With the Royal unseating Red Eye at their home track, they would take 3rd in the individual standings, and the Kobalts as a team would take 3rd in the overall standings. Coming off of another Showdown title and a great performance in Marbula One Season 3, the Kobalts had pretty high hopes heading into the 2022 qualifiers. And much like last year, the Kobalts would be in the easier group of the two, so this should at least help them qualify, right? The first half of the qualifiers went pretty decent for them as they placed 6th in climbing and did pretty good in hurdles, finishing 2nd. They would slip up a bit with a 9th place finish in balancing, but as long as they don't flounder around in triathlon, they'll be good. But unfortunately, they would end up floundering around in triathlon, finishing in 8th. Much like 2018 and 2021, the Kobalts would miss out on the slimmest of margins, failing to qualify by 1 point behind the Baltic Chaos. They have to attend yet another showdown, which they could possibly three-peat. But they got off to a rather disastrous start with a 15th place in Swing Wave. Despite Meepo doing decent in sprints with a 7th place finish, the road would get even bumpier as Azure would DNF in Water Race and tie with Mimo for 15th. And it did not help that the team took 12th in the relay race, leaving them to be in dead last with 15 points after the first half of the showdown. The second half, however, started off with a decent performance in block pushing and Gnome taking another gold in funnels. As for the last 2 events, the Kobalts struggled, finishing 12th in climbing, and for Sand Rally, Azure wishes they could just forget that. Their 15th place finish in Sand Rally would cause the Kobalts to drop into the bottom 4, leaving them to be relegated and not compete in the 2023 qualifiers. At least Cerulean showed some Christmas spirit and finished with a bronze in the Christmas race. Marbula One Season 4 was around the corner, and the Kobalts would run it back with their duo from Season 3. Cerulean didn't have all that good of a season, with their best finish being 7th place at Misty Mountain. Sounds familiar. But anyway, they finished 24th out of the 40 racers and scored only 29 points. Royal, on the other hand, got off to a phenomenal start, winning their first 2 races at Sakura Garden and a Raceway. They will also get a bronze at Two-More Turnpike and finish decent with a 7th place finish at their home track, Electron Expressway. They were 9 points behind Momo, who was leading the individual standings. The team championship may have been out of their reach, but the individual championship was still up for grabs. They will need at least a 7th place finish, and the individual title is theirs. But as this is the Kobalts, they come so close yet so far. Royal finishes 13th at Casino Square, which would not be enough for them to win the individual championship over Momo. The Kobalts would finish 7th when it comes to the team championship. Due to a bottom 4 finish in 2022, the Kobalts would automatically have to partake in the 2023 Showdown, into which they had a pretty bad time. 13th in Honeycomb Team Pursuit, an alarming 15th place by Gnome in Funnel Endurance, and a 10th place finish in Legion March Wave that could have been better had they not gotten pushed into the catch basin by one of the Wolfpack members. Even with top half performances in Sand Rally and 5-meter relay, the Kobalts would sit in 15th after 5 events. They would have to rely on Royal to do well in Honeydome if they want to avoid a bottom 4. Fortunately for them, Royal would win with ease and the Kobalts would propel up from 15th into 7th. Marble Survival 100 was coming up and the Kobalts would send out Azure to be their representative. They did just as well as you thought they would do. A 96% chance to not finish in last, and guess where Azure finishes? The more time passes, the more Azure becomes a shell of their former self. When it comes to the Brilliant Blue, the best thing about this team is that their Christmas spirit is still intact as Meepo finishes 7th out of the 32 racers in 2023. When it comes to Marbula One Season 5, this season was really a tale of two marbles for the Kobalts. Cerulean locked in after a mediocre Season 4, while Royal, on the other hand, did the exact opposite. They went from one of the best M1 racers to matching Lemon Lime in terms of total points. As for Cerulean, they finished top 6 in every single race of theirs and had a pretty good shot at winning the individual championship for Season 5 over Red Eye. But then came the ghost of Misty Mountain.
We'll see if the yellow flag is enough to make these marbles carry a bit of caution through this sector. Oh, it's gotten worse, yes. That opening curve has now moved farther out, and we've got a red flag.
Like Misty Mountain, Cerulean was chilling in podium position until the red flag occurred, and they ended up dropping their momentum and dropping to 5th. This would cause them to lose out on the individual championship to Red Eye by 2 points. And with that out the way, let's move on to the 2024 qualifiers. The 2024 Winter Marble League qualifiers were here, and the Kobalts actually got off to a solid start in Ice Dash and Half Pipe. As for Gnome and Meepo, they did rather middle of the pack in Snow Drag, but the team would be in 8th after first 3 qualifier events. All they need is to do at least okay-ish in Short Track, and they'll be good. So which marble does Coach Sapphire choose to send out for Short Track? Azure.
Still hold on to it right now. Run a little bit tighter a line, and they're actually helped on that corner, but then get splayed wide. That contact with Mellow Yellow put them out of the running. Snowballs come up and get 9 along with Solar Flares just before time expired.
Just when you thought this team couldn't invent new ways to break their fans' hearts, they somehow managed to do that. Not only did Azure do really bad, but Radiance, Hop, and most notably Sheep did really well. The possibility of your first main league appearance since 2016, and it would slip out of their hands just like that. For the 4th time, the Kobalts would miss out by the slimmest of margins. 1 point to the Wolfpack. After years of missed cues and missed opportunities, Kobalts coach Sapphire would step down from the position. Realistically, this should have happened after their relegation in 2022. But nonetheless, they are out, and the Kobalts have 4 candidates for the coaching job. Admiral, Aerothrite, Lapis, and Navy. Out of those 4, the Kobalts would then hire Smokey, the former Hazes coach. Interesting. They do have a pretty good resume, but can they be the one to help the Kobalts go into the proper direction for the foreseeable future? Heading into the 2024 Showdown, the Kobalts didn't really look flashy. In the 6 Showdown events, the Kobalts could score either only 4, 7, or any cumulative of the 2. Their best finish being at Short Track courtesy of Gnome. The other events consisted of Royal finishing 12th and Skiing Rally. Smokey decided to send in Azure for funnels for some reason instead of Gnome. Cerulean putting up one of the best times in Ice Dash and still not making it out of their heat. Gnome and Meepo, they got pushed around in dual half pipe. And for Ice Maze, Meepo dozed off during the heats before eventually turning on the Jets in the consolation round, giving them a 3rd 9th place finish in the 6 event showdown. As a result, they would finish 9th overall, beating teams like the Rangers and Shining Swarm. As Marble Survival Season 2 was coming up, the Kobalts' new coach, Smokey, knew better from Sapphire's earlier mistakes and would not send in Azure for this time. They instead would send in Gnome, who did really well, even winning 3 races during their tenure. This was much needed for the Brilliant Blue, given that last season went, well, last season. They not only reached top half, but they even got to the final 8. An impressive feat for sure. But unfortunately, that's where their run would stop, securing 8th out of the 32 racers. Still impressive nonetheless. And that's where we could wrap this video up. Although they have their ups and mostly downs, the Kobalts still have that competitive spirit in them. It's been over 3,000 days since this team competed in the main league. Will it be more heartbreak for this team, or will they finally break their streak and qualify for the first time? We'll just have to wait and see. But until then, may the 4th be with you. Peace.